order of what's the date today? The April.
Let's stay for April.
Yes. This meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside. Can we have a roll call of those in attendance, please?
Director Penrose.
Here.
Director Lohman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Director Ruddock.
Here.
Director Slater Carter. I don't see her signed in. Chair Dye.
Here.
Okay.
And
We have
can
a
you
quorum.
introduce the staff members who are here?
Yes, staff members, George Evans, Finance Officer from SAM, Tim Costello, Susan Turby, and of course our General Counsel, Jeremy Hungres.
Thank you. Do we have comment from members of the public on items that are not on the agenda?
Madam Chair, adjustment to the agenda, please.
I'm sorry?
Adjustments to the agenda.
Oh, okay.
If you would like to announce that we were not going to be having item 4A, as the gentleman who was to present has fallen sick, and therefore it will be pushed to the next meeting. The
Okay.
presentation from First Flush report will be pushed to the next meeting.
All right, that's too bad because it paired very nicely with our presentation from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, but we will look forward to hearing it at our next meeting. As for public comment, I didn't hear anyone from the public who wants to speak. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? No, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Ruddock,
Aye.
Chair Slater, Director Slater Carter, not yet come in. Chair Dye.
Aye, and there was a minor revision that I think that was made before the meeting, yes? Susie?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Just a,
Minor revision in the minutes of the meeting where a line was repeated twice, I guess, the same thing. So,
just a clerical revision, no substantive change.
yes.
all right, so hearing a unanimous vote, that is approved. Let's moving on to regular business. You would like to make the introduction, Issue?
Yes. So the first item is a presentation on the Basin Plan Amendment by Regional Water Quality Control Board. We have with us Barbara Beginska and her colleague, Jan O'Hara. Before I pass it on to them, just a brief introduction on the Basin Quality Basin Plan Amendment. And the Regional Water Quality Control Board has been discussing with us, GCSD and Half Moon Bay, for almost more than a year, I would guess. Last year, they started off discussions. They were lucky enough to come to the plant and have discussions much before the COVID started. And we had several discussions, and this was primarily because of because they wanted to establish a bacteria total maximum daily load, TMDL, for the beaches in Pillar Point Harbor and Venice Beach. And this was primarily because they noticed that there were exceedances of Enterococcus bacteria, and therefore they wanted to establish these limits. Now I will pass it on to Barbara, who has a short presentation, and then we can have questions. So Barbara, you can share your screen.
Okay, I will try.
Welcome.
Okay.
We're looking forward to your presentation.
Okay,
Hey, Barb.
yes. Sure. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting us to talk about the bacteria TMDL. My name is Barbara Baginska. I work for the Water Board and will be describing the bacteria TMDL that we developed, and the Water Board adopted the TMDL on February 10 this year. This TMDL is to address water quality impairment at the beaches in Pillar Point Harbor and Venice Beach. I'll just let me see how I can, okay, here. The reason for this TMDL is that the beaches in Pillar Point Harbor and Venice Beach, indicated with red ovals on this map, do not meet the current water quality objectives for bacteria, as Kishan just mentioned. These beaches have been on the 303D list of impaired water bodies since 2002 and continue to exceed bacteria objectives for Enterococcus. And this really triggers concerns about potential human exposure to pathogens through water contact recreation and adversely affects the designated beneficial uses at the beaches. So when a water body is identified as impaired, we are required by the Federal Clean Water Act to take actions to fix that impairment. And those actions are usually in the form of a TMDL, or total maximum daily load, which are the strategies to restore water quality. So in a nutshell, TMDL identifies and prioritizes sources of pollution, or in case of this project, bacteria. All our TMDLs include plans which describe the necessary actions that would bring the water quality to compliance and name the parties responsible for implementation. As you can see, despite the fact that this project focuses on improving water quality at the beaches, geographically it covers the entire area draining to the coast between the harbor and Venice Beach. And this approach follows the US EPA guidelines and is necessary because some of the sources of bacteria are located in the upper watershed. Just to give you an idea of the problem, so this slide shows the rate of exceedance of the water quality objectives observed at the beaches. And as you probably know, the San Mateo County Health Department samples water at the beaches between Pillar Point Harbor and Half Moon Bay. And we evaluated over 10 years of weekly data. The Enterococcus water quality objective is a geometric mean less or equal to 30 colony-forming units measured in 100 milliliter sample. A geometric mean is a way of averaging data that best represents sort of average conditions when data sets are very long and also quite variable, which is the case for bacteria. The beaches in the graph are shown left to right, with Mavericks Beach being the most northerly beach in Pillar Point Harbor and Francis Beach, the most southern beach located south of Venice Beach. The axis on the left of the chart shows the number of geomeans, and on the right, the percent exceedance rate. So the blue bars indicate the total number of geomeans that we were able to calculate from available data, and the orange bars indicate the number of geomeans that exceed the water quality objective. And the numbers above the dotted gray line are the percent exceedance rate. So as you can see, the objective is significantly exceeded at all beaches in Pillar Point Harbor within that first red box outline. In comparison, Venice Beach is moderately but notably impacted with the exceedance rate of almost 25%. Other beaches show good water quality and are not impaired according to the California listing policy. So this slide basically depicts...
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Was that,
Sure.
did this show Surfers Beach was not impaired?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, so I went back to the summary slide, and Surface Beach is within the acceptable level of exceedances. And as you can see, we altogether we had more than 600 geomeans that we were able to calculate, which is a large sort of set of data. They may seem, you may see the exceedances from time to time, but this is, we use new water quality objective for Enterococcus as the indicator of the water quality, and the geomeans that require to calculate, the rolling geomean that requires to calculate, to have at least five samples in a 6-week period.
What is a geomean?
Yeah.
It's a type of averaging that is used, is recommended by the EPA and the state board to assess water quality. It's type of averaging. Okay, can we go next?
Yes.
Okay. So this slide depicts some of the common sources contributing bacteria to the Pillar Point Harbor. And we use the local monitoring data, previous microbial source tracking studies, and literature review to identify these sources. So the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District, Surfrider, and other implementing parties, including SAM, provided very helpful information about the possible causes of high bacteria concentrations that we see at some of the beaches. So sources of bacteria within the harbor include amenities such as public restrooms with toilet, shower, and laundry facilities, waste pump out facilities, shops, and restaurants, sanitary sewer system, recreational and liveaboard boats, waste from commercial fishing operations, and also runoff from piers and aging stormwater infrastructure, which is over 50 years old now, runoff from parking lots and boat maintenance facilities, and domestic pets. Dogs are often seen at the beaches in the surrounding areas, and DNA tests show that bacteria in samples are often from dogs. So there are also 4 stormwater outfalls which can bring bacteria from the watershed to the harbor. And sources in the watershed include, again, sanitary sewer collection systems, municipal stormwater runoff, including domestic pets, and runoff from Caltrans infrastructure. We have not identified any horseboarding facilities or septic systems as sources in this watershed. The potential sources of bacteria to Venice Beach include municipal stormwater runoff, horseboarding and training facilities, septic systems, wastewater treatment plant is in this watershed, and sanitary sewer collection systems, and also runoff from the local landfill and Caltrans infrastructure. So Venice Beach and its watershed has not been studied as much as Pillar Point Harbor. So we collected samples from upstream and downstream locations in Frenchman's and Pilarcitos creeks, which drain directly to Venice Beach. We analyzed the samples for presence of human, dog, gull, cow, and horse DNA to give us a better idea of the dominant sources in the watershed. So we are especially concerned about horse waste because 2 horseboarding facilities are located just upstream of the beach, and there are more horse facilities in the watershed. So this slide provides a snapshot of bacterial results from March and June last year. And it shows bacteria distribution by source and spatially throughout the watershed. The sources are indicated by the horse, dog, bird, and little human icons, and the bars show bacteria densities, with the red portion of the bar showing the magnitude of exceedance of the bacteria objective. So the data indicate that all samples collected in the upper watershed, away from the beaches, have low densities of bacteria and are below the water quality objectives, as indicated on this slide by the tiny white bars that you can almost see, and there are no red exceedances. Also note that there are no human icons or sources in the upper watershed. In the lower watershed, closer to the beaches, bacteria densities and exceedances increase, as indicated by the presence of these red bars. And we find human sources are detected in close proximity to the beaches. Also, other human-induced markers like horses or dogs are found predominantly near the beaches.
Now you're showing, can I ask a question? You're showing that, excuse me.
Yes.
That's Frenchman's Creek right there that you're showing the symbols on?
Yes, the Frenchman's Creek is this upper.
Right.
Yeah.
What about the other creeks?
Pilar Citas is this one.
Right. Well, what about the more northern ones?
Well,
do you have any data for those?
Well, again, in this data collection, we concentrated on the two major creeks draining to Venice Beach, because there was some data collection in previous years from the creeks draining into the Pilar Point Harbor. And some of this data, we looked at the data that were available, and there were, much more information about what's going on in these other watersheds than in the watersheds draining to Venice Beach. But the patterns are quite similar. So further away, you go further upstream, you don't find exceedances of bacteria objectives. You are going closer to the beach, you see higher concentrations, frequency of exceedance increases, and also there are human sources. Have I answered your question?
Yes, though it's my understanding that when the RCD did their work, there was virtually no human, there's no trace in Pillar Point, very, very, very negligible amount of human.
Yeah, the RCD often concentrated on the harbor itself. When you measure the concentrations in the harbor, they try to identify whether, for example, the liveaboard boats were the source of bacteria. And one of the findings of the sample collection was that they didn't see a lot of traces from the liveaboard boats. But the issue is complicated because it is changing frequently. Boats are moving in and out. There are boats in the outer harbor which are not tested. So it's really very difficult to say with a few samples whether something is a particular source or not.
But if they said there was not a trace of human fecal coliform bacteria, doesn't that mean it's also not coming down the drainages?
That's correct. But it depends when and how it was sampled and how often it was sampled. The same applies to our sampling. It's a snapshot. It's not something that we can say with a huge amount of certainty that it doesn't happen at all. What I'm trying to show you is what we potentially are seeing is that the upper watersheds are not impacted by human sources, while when you come to the sort of the sliver of land along the beach, these sources pop up.
And do you have tests that show human fecal coliform bacteria in the harbor? Because it was my understanding
I didn't test in the harbor. This slide is only about Frenchman's and Pilar Citas Creek, and all these human figures that are shown in, let's say, Frenchman's Creek and human figure in Pilar Citas Creek our samples indicated the presence of human source.
Right, because you tested there, but do you have any tests from the RCD or elsewhere that show it in the ones draining into the harbor?
There is a small number of samples that also showed human sources.
Very, very.
Yes, small. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. I just was trying to clarify, because I look at all those little people there, and it was my understanding there really wasn't much in the harbor. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Where were the samples taken in the harbor when you were checking for the live aboard boats?
We didn't sample from the harbor. Again, this is the RCD that sampled, and these reports are available and show maps of where the sample locations were. So basically, there was a number of locations within the harbor when the boats are moored, and they tried, a number of locations in the harbor.
So they weren't just on the beach, though?
Not only on the beach, no.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's go back to the TMDL and its targets. So the TMDL target is something that we have to establish for each project. So for this, in general, the TMDL target is the desired water quality conditions for waters at the beaches that represent the good water quality. And in this case, we propose a TMDL target that is equivalent to the water quality objective. Since there are different types of bacteria used for fresh and marine waters, our bacteria TMDL is expressed as the total density of Enterococcus, because this is the best indicator of fecal contamination in marine waters, such as at the beaches, where we go into the creeks and sample fresh waters. Then we look at E. coli as the indicator of water quality. But for the beaches, we use the Enterococcus. So for this TMDL, Enterococcus is our target. And as I mentioned before, the objective is expressed as a geometric mean of 30 colony-forming units, which is calculated as a rolling geometric mean. And if we have only sporadic data available and not the weekly data, we can also use a statistical threshold value, or STV, which is used to evaluate water quality based on single sample values. And we set our allowable daily load as equivalent to the STV of 110 colony-forming units. And these targets will be measured at the beaches to ensure recreational uses are protected. And we consider that the beach has good water quality if the number of exceedances is less than 10%. So with targets set, the next step is to allocate the acceptable level of bacteria discharges from each of the identified sources. So allocations tell each source how much bacteria it can discharge and still achieve the targets. And as shown, sources of untreated human waste, such as sewer collection systems, septic systems, boats, and restrooms, have an allocation of 0. And this is because the existing basin plan waste discharge prohibitions prohibits discharges of untreated or partially treated sewage. And you are probably very well aware of that prohibition. The wastewater treatment plant, municipal, Caltrans, and landfill runoff and horse facilities all have allocations equal to the TMDL targets, which in this case is 30 CFU in 100 milliliters, meaning that whatever bacteria load these sources discharge must not result in bacteria densities that exceeds the targets in the receiving waters. So it's not in the effluent, it's in the receiving waters. So to meet the TMDL allocations, the implementation plan focuses on enhancing the existing efforts and programs. These include actions to control the wastewater treatment plant effluent, eliminate sanitary sewer overflows, or minimize the pollutants in municipal stormwater. So we basically want everyone to do a little bit more, but what they are doing already. And the TMDL also includes additional requirements for septic system inspections and repairs by homeowners, harbor operations, and confined animal operations, such as horse boarding facilities. The TMDL also calls for assessment of beach water quality data and encourages supplemental monitoring to improve understanding of remaining bacteria sources, especially if initial control measures do not achieve the TMDL. So finally,
who's going to fund? Who's funding? I mean, it sounds as if there's an ongoing testing program for beach water. Is that something that Regional Water Quality Control Board is going to do?
So first of all, there is still through an existing program, the San Mateo County Health Department is going to continue monitoring at the beaches. So through this program, everyone has access to weekly data. So what we are asking for is for all implementing parties to, which I will discuss a little bit later, to look at this data and evaluate the data on an annual basis and tell us whether you all guys meet the water quality objectives and TMDL requirements. So that's a minimum, but there are ifs also, which I'm going to mention in a moment.
Okay.
So just the last thing that I want to mention about the implementation plan is that it offers a phased approach to reduce bacterial loads from sanitary sewer collection system, vessels and amenities in the harbor, and municipal stormwater runoff. So if the TMDL is not achieved in phase 1, the parties have to implement additional bacteria controls in phase 2 and conduct more advanced monitoring. So the targets are meant to be achieved in 15 years or less. So it's quite a bit of time for everyone. So I'm sure that you are interested in implementation requirements for SAM. So basically SAM, City of Half Moon Bay, and Granada Community Services District are responsible for implementing the TMDL requirements for their portions of the sanitary sewer collection systems. And as I mentioned before, the implementation actions applicable to sanitary sewer collection systems are phased. So in phase 1, the implementation actions include basically the things that you already do, like complying with the statewide general waste discharge requirements. This is an ongoing requirement. But we also require to prepare enhanced sewer system management plan and prioritize inspections and repairs in areas which are close to the beaches, like the TMDL says within half a mile from the beach, or areas connected to the beach. And we would like you to identify, of course, all leaking or damaged infrastructure and make repairs as soon as possible. This is not to really measure the specific distance. We would rely on your understanding and knowledge of the system and finding the ways of implementing these actions. So basically, we are looking for the best possible outcome and not to measure the distance from the beach. And on annual basis, as I mentioned, we would like you to determine effectiveness of the repairs. So basically, we would like to receive a report that says what was done, what was prioritized, whether there was any problems. The report will also include the assessment of beach monitoring data, and we encourage all implementing parties to work together on that. We don't want everyone to assess all the data and provide us with a separate report. But on an annual basis, we would like to know what has been done to implement the TMDL. So if the TMDL targets are not achieved during the 5 years of phase 1, the parties have to implement additional bacteria controls in phase 2 and conduct more advanced monitoring. So what it means really is that we would like you to enhance your inspections and repairs and maybe go further away from the beach and consider other options, like, for example, whether there is a benefit of trying to think of lateral replacement projects, for example, to make further improvements. But if there is also, this is not all written in stone. If source control actions are fully implemented throughout the watershed and the TMDL targets are still not met, the Water Board may reevaluate or revise the targets or the entire TMDL and allocations as appropriate. Okay. And this is almost the end of my presentation, so I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen throughout the rest of this year. So Regional Water Board approved this action, the Basin Plan Amendment and the TMDL in February. Now the same TMDL has to be approved by the State Board, and we have a tentative deadline date for the approval to happen this July. And excuse me. The next step would be for us to go to the Office of Administrative Law for the approval of the TMDL, which we hope is going to happen sometime in October. And the final approval has to be given by the US EPA. And again, we hope that by the end of this year, the US EPA will approve this TMDL. We work closely with the US EPA when we developed any TMDLs, including the bacteria TMDL. So what it means that I hope that by January 2022, this TMDL will be fully in effect, and everyone will be working towards these steps that I demonstrated that have to be done to implement it and to make the water quality at the beaches better. So basically, this concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
All right. Well, I want to have questions from the board first, and then we have Greg Yegas from the community who would like to ask questions. The first questions, I think, come from Director Ruddock.
Thank you. Excellent presentation.
Yes, thank you.
What level of communication has occurred already, like notifying the city in Grenada, sanitary district specifically? That was my first question. My second question is, do you have lat-longs for the areas that were sampled so that we can pinpoint, where you were, gathering the data?
So, okay, so as to your first question about the information provided to everyone who is a stakeholder and implementing parties. So from the beginning, we reached out to representatives of all implementing parties, and they have been on our TMDL informational list. They were able to provide comments on the draft version of the report and the Basin Plan Amendment. Then they were able to provide formal comments during the public review period, and also comment at the board meeting. So they pretty much know that this is going to happen. As to the second question, for our data that we collected in Frenchman's and Pilar Citas Creek, we do have the latent long locations, and we can provide the data to you.
Yeah, Barbara, I would add, first, you might unshare your screen if you can, Barbara.
Yes.
And I would
Sure.
add that Barbara held a CEQA scoping meeting in Half Moon Bay well over a year before this. So we introduced the topic and people had an opportunity to learn about it then. And we met with many parties throughout the time until COVID made us not meet with people any longer.
Okay.
Thanks, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. I was looking for the place where I can unshare.
So thank you. I would like the lat longs. And one last question, and I'm not saying we would do this, but I'm just, covering some bases here. So I'm guessing there's further opportunities for the city of Granada to provide input before the July meeting. And whether there's like an appeal process. I'm guessing we would have exercised that already, given that we've, been involved, but I'm just trying to find out what points of decision making still allow for input.
So before that approval is going to happen at the state board, there will be a public review period again. So we will, like before, we'll send the information to everyone when the public review period starts. I would like you to note that I guess the first step would be to have a look at the project page at the Water Board's website to see what comments we received and how we responded to comments, because some of the comments that you may have been already provided by either stormwater people or others, and therefore there is a sort of soft rule which says the state board establishes sort of rules for the second public hearing on the basin plan amendment, which says that if comments were provided before and we responded to comments, it is not necessary to send it again.
I have to say, I read all the comments and the response, and almost none of the comments were any. There were almost no comments, changes made to the document in response to comments. They were one after the other. They saw no changes were necessary.
Yes.
So it was actually, I thought it was quite interesting how dramatic it was that none of the comments had any impact on the form of the final decision. It's your prerogative, though. Director Lohman, you were next.
Yeah, this is kind of maybe a question to the group because I don't have all the information here. It's my understanding that with CCWD has done a lot of work on Denison's Creek to create their water supply up there. I think Denison was the primary creek running into the harbor. I don't know the current state of that creek. Is there any flow in the creek or no flow in the creek? But if we have very little water flowing into the harbor, it's nothing but a big tank, with a little bit of tidal action going back and forth. Catherine's got an idea she'll talk about later here too, I'm sure. But does anybody know the status of Denison Creek? Because if the water's not going in there, the harbor's not getting flushed out very well.
It's perennial.
Okay.
It runs virtually all the time, and in the last drought, I don't think it ever dried up.
I mean, is the flow reduced with CCWD holding the water up there or anything? Is that or is it just constant flow like it always was now?
I think they keep that water in the reservoir. once that's filled, the creek resumes its natural flow. So it's really low, like in October before the rains start, and then it goes up, of course, when it rains.
Okay.
But it's still, I've never walked by there and not seen water flowing.
Okay.
That's true.
My other question, there was a comment in there about lateral inspections. The sanitary districts a long time ago said or proposed, well, why don't, when a house is sold, we have a lateral inspection and check all the laterals? And that was the real estate community statewide slammed that down. It was just not going to happen. So prior studies have shown that the SAM system through El Granada and the IPS into Half Moon Bay was not the cause of any of the pollution either. That people saw some pipes that were open flowing in, they say, oh, that's the Granada system. It's not. The pipes are inspected all the time, so I very doubt that the leakage or the thing is coming from the actual SAM system itself.
Well, I probably agree, and we don't really have like huge expectations for you to do something completely different. I think you've got a plan in place. What we require for this TMDL is basically sort of refocusing a tiny degree of your work on areas which are in close proximity to the beaches. So the things that, the sewage overflows that happened, for example, in 2017, where thousands of gallons of sewage went to the creek and then to the ocean, would not happen. So that is a preventable thing. And I hope that through the inspections and repairs that you have already in place, you can demonstrate to us that this is actually working.
Any further board comments? I'm going to go to the public. Greg?
No, I have my hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, Catherine. I apologize.
It's up there. I've been concerned about the water quality in the harbor for about 40 years because my husband's first job was with fishermen who couldn't keep their catch alive in the holds because of the inadequate oxygen in the harbor. So it's been an ongoing problem. I would like for, and I see that the Water Quality Board has picked sort of the obvious problems, but often the problem is in the detail. So I know, for instance, Balance Hydrologics has been doing stream flow monitoring into the harbor. I would like SAM and the Harbor District, because it's their jurisdiction primarily, to find a way to go for some of this grant money to do a deeper look at this problem. For instance, the airport aquifer, Balance Hydrologic reports that there are freshwater springs in the harbor. But we don't know, and MWSD knows at the, from our wells at the airport that the nitrate level in that aquifer, which dumps into that harbor and influences the harbor, has been going up over the years. And yes, there is a huge septic system at the airport, maybe several. They're owned by the county.
Yes, we reviewed information about that septic system. It has been inspected. It has it seems to work perfectly okay. So we don't have red flags about it.
That's very interesting, because when there was a restaurant there, they were pumping that septic system out on a weekly basis. Many of us in the public saw that happening. So it I think there needs to be perhaps a double check on that. What do the nitrates do to the oxygen levels in the harbor? And as Rick said, GCSD has had no leaks. We need to look at the breakwater and see whether the inner breakwater and the outer breakwater areas have the same water quality control problems. And we need to, instead of doing a broad brush, I would like Sam and Harbor District to start looking at these problems and do a study for it. MWSD has piezometers that have been taking water samples on the road to Mavericks Beach since 2003. We can get that data out. I think we need to be taking a holistic look at this problem instead of trying to treat the disease by treating the few symptoms that are easily identified. And the same for Venice Beach. It has interesting problems. One of the things I've noticed and have paid particular attention to at the harbor is the more development there is in Grenada, the more the groundwater patterns and stream flows change. And maybe there's been a change because of all the development, and we don't know. And we need to be looking along with the county at where these winter waters, the runoff, is going. So I would like to see Keishan and the general manager from the Harbor District get together and write up a grant along with the support from the Regional Water Quality Control Board, the fishermen, Grenada, needless to say, Half Moon Bay, Montero would support it, and go from there. Let's, instead of taking the obvious solutions, please, let's take a holistic look and see what the issues are, particularly for the harbor, because it is such an important economic asset for the region. And so I don't know, Barbara B., whether we need to, how we would do this, but I trust Keishan and you and I think it's Jim from the Regional Water Quality Control Board could put in for these grants and make some serious inroads here on a holistic look. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Greg, did you want to speak?
I've got Matthew there too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew, you want to go ahead?
First, just a definition, a colony forming unit. That sounds like these things flow out into the ocean, and are they reproducing and growing as colonies in the ocean?
Well, it's done in it's the way of the how the bacteria densities are tested in the lab. Basically, they put water on a sort of growing medium and wait for number of hours to figure out how many colonies of bacteria are there. And so that's why I think the name comes as colony forming units, because basically it's looking at the Petri dish and counting how many units of bacteria are there. So
thank you.
I'm not a biologist, so I cannot fully explain this.
That's a relief, because it would be a problem of a whole nother magnitude if they actually floated in the ocean and then it's like crazy.
No, this is a laboratory method that is used and validated by scientists and by EPA. So this is how it's done in the lab.
Okay, I'd like to get. I'd like to be a little clearer on what the responsibility and the authority of the sewer collection and treatment agencies are. You showed a map that showed contaminants coming down the natural streams into the ocean and into the harbor, but you didn't show any that showed the sewer agencies having any contribution.
Okay.
Agencies be expected to somehow figure out why those contaminants are coming down to natural streams and regulate it?
Well, first of all, that map showed the opposite what you are saying, because it showed that the undeveloped portion, upstream undeveloped portions of the creeks have very low bacteria densities, bacteria concentrations. So these large portions of the watershed do not seem to contribute that bacteria load to the beaches. When you get close to the beach and when you are within the more developed and more intensively used portions of the creek, you actually see the much higher concentrations of bacteria exceeding the water quality objectives. You see the DNA you see the DNA from dogs, from humans, from other sources. And if you think about human sources, then sewage is one of the major source that could contribute that sewage. And I'm not saying that your pipes are fully responsible for everything. What we are trying to do is we are trying to identify the common sources in the watersheds, the presence of potential sources in the watershed, and ask everyone to double check whether they operate as well as possible, and basically look forward, sort of do the forward thinking, and maybe if you have to schedule a repair and you have to choose in a particular year to do the repair, in close proximity to the beach versus somewhere else, we would like you to take into account the TMDL and the need to address the areas near the beach first. So that's really what we require.
So there's no scientific evidence that any of the pipes are.
There are. Yeah.
Let me give Barbara a break for a minute. She's been on point. So I will give an example of how this works in TMDLs. So as you know, there's so many valuable beaches up and down the coast of California. And so we have a lot of bacteria TMDLs at a lot of beaches. And almost every time, it's very common and it makes sense for every sewer district to say, well, we know the status of our pipes and they're not leaking. But yet when a TMDL is in place and then each sewer agency has some responsibility to, do their inspections near the beaches and, check, there are leakers found occasionally. And the best example we have of that is a beach called Baby Beach down in Southern California, where there was a brand new restroom. It's fairly new. I think it was less than 5 or 10 years old. And, no one wanted to look at the pipes because it was so new and there was no chance that it was the pipes. But yet, actually, there was a faulty installation and it was actually, sewage from that bathroom going straight into Baby Beach. And it's called Baby Beach because babies swim there. It's a really warm, shallow one. So, these things do happen. We don't, even entities with the best of track records and the best of intentions will occasionally find a leak of some sort. And so in all of our bacteria TMDLs, without exception, the sewer authority is one of the entities that reports in and tells us, yes, we've looked at this, we're going to be looking at, over the next 15 years, we're going to be looking at these, particular areas. We're going to be investigating. We're going to do some, the smoke tests, whatever kinds of tests that you do to check the integrity of your pipes, and report out. So largely for sewer entities, sewer collection systems, it's not a heavy lift. it's the lightest lift of all because, the cities and their stormwater issues, that's quite a bit harder. They've got to go after the dogs. They've got to think about rerouting some of their stormwater. They have a lot of work to do. So I just want to put it in perspective of other beaches up and down the coast and then of other implementing parties. I don't know if that helps, but.
Yeah, that is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to give, Greg has a lot of substantive questions, and I'd like to give him a chance to jump in unless there's another board member who has immediate questions. Okay, Greg, you're on.
I'm not sure you want me to ask all these questions.
Maybe not all of them.
I don't
Pick
want
and
to
choose.
I don't want to take all the board's time. Now, for the representatives here like Barbara, I want you to understand I'm not a SAM board member. I am a member elected to the Midcoast Community Council. And I may be jumping to a conclusion. I'm good at that. But what I see here is a threat to development throughout the Midcoast from these regulations. And so I think we have to take them seriously. In particular, I'm concerned, and it may be standard practice, but this geometric mean, it seems like you're waiting for things to go bad and counting those 6-week intervals, but not taking an average across all time. And that to me is a problem, although it may be what the regulation allows. So I'm curious about that. I have a bunch of other detailed questions. What I would request is, can I have an email, and I will put these in writing to you and ask for a written response. I'm going to agree with a few things that have already been said here. For one, what Matthew said, the Denison Creek issue is important. I remember reading a CCWD document a while back that during drought years, Denison Creek has its flow reduced by 85%. So that would imply a much higher concentration of bacteria. And so it's really important to understand when these measurements are being taken and whether we give the same weight to a drought year or a series of 3 drought years as we do to what is called normal flow. And of course, that gets back to just how serious droughts are around here. I also agree with what Catherine has said, and I wonder if the local hazard mitigation plan, which we have draft plans due by May 21st to get FEMA money. I don't know if this qualifies. I will check with Ann Ludwig, but it seems to me we really ought to be getting on top of submitting a mitigation plan for some of this stuff to try and get in line for some funding, because it's going to get serious. I also wonder, for instance, about changes that have been put in place. I hike at Wave Crest often, and I see, for example, that the sewer manhole covers have been raised sometime, and I think in about the last year. So whatever infiltration and inflow might have been occurring into the sewer that I think is running down to the hotel at the Ritz, I'm not positive, but it seems like that's the logical destination. Whatever the
but that's far away
might have
from
been,
the TMDL area.
well, you don't know where that pipe goes.
It doesn't go where.
See what I'm saying? You sure?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but it does raise the question of, have there been changes made? That was a question that somebody else here mentioned. Have there been changes made, and have we sampled since the change? Okay. And I don't understand why the sewer authority would have to be making changes if the measurements of the sewer don't show a problem. I mean, I don't understand that. So can I have an email, and I will write you these questions and ask for answers. It will affect what we do going forward in terms of asking for mitigation grants. And I think that's an important action step, as Catherine said.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Can someone give Greg an email address to ask his questions? Is that possible?
My guess is Keishan has one.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great.
I can pass it on to Greg.
Does anyone else have questions for tonight? So essentially, we're going to start out by revising our SSMP, which we're ready to revise anyway, correct? That's really what we're doing next. And I'd be curious to see some of the data on, I hear your story about Baby Beach. See, any places did find out that they had problems in their system. I like to think that we're on top of, we're just our GCSD. I'm wearing my GCSD hat now, not my SAM hat. We're just starting our capital improvement program and replacing sewer lines, some of which are close to the harbor as part of our standard, regular work. So I would be curious to know if there are places that discovered they had unexpected problems, because I feel as if using the SAM collections crew, we have a pretty good idea of how our lines are operating. So anyway, thank you very much for giving us such
Barbara, if I could make a quick comment.
Sure, could I just finish? Okay,
sure.
I'll do my thank you.
Thank you. When we replace sewer lines, we also replace MWSD, all the sewer laterals associated with replacing that line. And we have been doing that for years. The question I have for Barbara is, this will be a future agenda item, but I'd like to know if the Water Board is willing to participate with SAM and with the Harbor District in doing a study and in writing grants to find the sources of these, because this is not a new problem. And I think the more stakeholders we have, RCD and others, associated with getting grants to study this problem, the more powerful our request can be. So yes, I am putting you a bit on the spot, and I somewhat apologize, but Greg and I tend to do that.
That's okay.
And so I'd love to have you guys work with Keishan on this. And can I get just a nod that you think that would be a worthy?
Well, I would say we do work with the RCD very closely on a lot of projects, and we do always, basically we've never turned them down for requests to support their grant applications.
Okay, but this is a grant application. This is a grant application from SAM. This is a grant application from the Harbor District, not RCD. RCD is a stakeholder.
Right.
And I love Calix. I think working with them and having RCD is extremely valuable on the coast side. But you have put these TMDL limits on SAM, and I believe we are stepping up by doing this study.
Nice. Yeah, as the authors of the TMDL, we can't write the grants, and but we can work with you.
You can support us. You can say, this really needs to be done. It's more than just a sewer line problem.
Yes, and the TMDL is very good for helping people, entities get money.
Thank you.
We could do worse than work now, continue to work with the RCD, which can bring different entities together. That's one of their strengths, and they're so good at that. So,
absolutely.
Keishan, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we will work with Harbor District and Regional Water Quality Control Board. I believe the date for those grants is mid-June. We still have enough time, so we'll work towards that and put forth a preliminary application.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I just want to thank you so much, because it's dry on paper. And you did a wonderful job of explaining it, and I think we all understand. And I thought some of the comments in response to our questions were really helpful too, to understand some of the thinking behind it. So that was very certainly helpful to me, and I appreciate your time and your coming to us to do this presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Good job, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
So now I'm going to leave the meeting, so to leave you out to the rest of your agenda. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Moving on to General Manager's report.
Okay, we will provide a detailed report normally at the second meeting of the month, but I would like to inform everyone that the wet weather storage expansion project is going full pace, and we are expecting to complete it by the end of this month. See, if you've driven by, you'll see all the storage chambers are in place, and testing has been progressing gradually, and we are working on it. So that's all I have to say, and we'll get the detailed report in the next meeting.
Keishan?
Yes. Yes,
Can I ask a
Director.
question? The Baby Beach story makes me wonder this. Were the existing tanks checked during this project for any leaks?
Yes, testing is in progress. Oh, you mean the existing?
I mean for the initial part of the storage facility where the tanks have been in there for 12 years or something?
No, the old tanks have not been checked now. They've been checked earlier. They're not being checked now.
Uh-huh.
When were they last checked, teacher?
I wouldn't know. I don't have that information, but my guess is when they were installed a couple of years back. I'm not aware of it. Tim, do you have anything different? Tim?
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking for the mute thing. The short answer is no.
Okay. So
They
were
very
just not
rarely-
installed.
They very rarely are full. And so, you know, the fact that they're empty most of the time indicates that they're certainly not a major ongoing source. But, you know, I guess if you could come report back to us on whether, if they are used for whether storm overflow, if they have if they have been checked to see if they're still
Sure,
watertight.
will do.
Yeah, they're not pressurized either, so they shouldn't leak.
Yep.
They shouldn't. They really shouldn't. But that's a good question. We should find out. So, anything else? Okay, attorney's report.
I'm going to touch on the prior presentation. Just one observation, Baby Beach and some of the other efforts to, bacteria is a really tough one, right? If those who follow it, it's a very difficult pollutant to control. There's so many other sources that can lead to bacteria exceedances, and these colonies can expand greatly, and it's a controversial area. Anyway, in Southern California, one of the real issues that we've had with the regional boards is an effort, one of the real problems in trying to develop a TMDL and to achieve water quality standards is managing for what we call orphan sources that aren't from a discharger. They're not from a wastewater agency. They're not from a sanitary agency, and they're not from a stormwater MS4 system. And so that's something we'll have to watch as these plans are developed. Is this an effort to try to shift responsibility for orphan sources onto public agencies? And that happens a lot. And so that's just something, it seems like the regional board staff that were here are really doing their best in good faith, but that's just something that we should probably focus on as efforts to develop these plans takes greater shape. But I have nothing else to report this evening. We will have a couple closed sessions when we get to that section.
Okay, quick comment. She said there's no problem with the septic systems at the airport. I don't know what politician they were talking to, but when 3-0 was open, and many of us went there on a routine basis, we routinely saw the pump out tanks there, or the pump out services. MWSD has been trying to get the airport to connect to our system for decades, and we keep getting ignored. One of the things that I'd like this study to do is to look at a way of maybe getting a water recycling facility somewhere in the vicinity of the harbor to put fresh water in the harbor, and try and get the county to contribute to paying for that, and also in the operations costs of it. Because again, there is more than one septic system, I believe, on the county airport. And the nitrates coming in from the agricultural areas have been going up for years. MWSD has 3 wells there, and we only keep them for emergency services. We don't keep them for routine water supply. So there's a lot going on, and I believe your comment is very germane, and I hope if we get this study approved and grants approved, that you will stay involved and help draft what we're looking for and go from there. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments?
No, not for me.
Okay. Directors' reports? Anyone?
Nothing
All
to
right,
report.
I guess we will adjourn to closed session. Oh, no, sorry, topics for future board consideration. Anything there? Seeing nothing, we will then adjourn to closed session.
Okay. Kishan, do we need people to do anything or?
A couple people to go.
Yeah, and then we can start. Maybe give a 5-minute break so that people can leave if you wish.
Okay, you get some water.
Yep.
Sounds good.
We're entering closed session for the items listed in section 9 of the agenda. And if those not involved in closed session could please leave.